Hello and welcome to another Best Junglers episode, and in this one we will be looking at the best junglers to main in Season 13, and yes, that means for the rest of Season 13. I also have a set of criteria that I use when I make these videos: meta-agnostic, signs of mastery, lower ban rates, variety and itemization, and of course position, as well as a low probability of kneecap nerfs. The one thing we will waver on just a little bit are the ban rates given the nature of the meta, and of course everyone should have at least 2 champions in their champion pool in case it does get banned, because of course it will at some stage. And to go along with this video, I will be updating my jungle improvement PDF to give you all of the jungle tips and drills you need to improve regardless of what champion you play. That is free for you, available on my website, along with jungle video courses for your MMR, jungle coaching, and a coaching VOD library. Basically everything a jungler needs to reach their peak goal faster than ever. All available on Virkayu.gg. And as we start off with my favorite cat, Rengar, it's important to note that while he does have a higher ban rate and high elo, the majority of you are not going to be challenger, and so you will be able to use him to get high elo. He is meta agnostic and he has had an amazing season. Obviously his mastery curve is one of the more difficult in the game, and because of the variety and itemization and playstyles, is truly one of the best junglers to main. Low probability of kneecap nerfs because they're not really going to touch him and just let him be. You've got a champion that's thriving in terms of whatever the meta is. If there's an Evelyn meta, we can deal with that pretty nicely. We need to full clear, we can do that. We want to invade, we can do that. And of course, when it's an ADC meta, you want to ensure that ADCs are your #1 target. And because they're stupid, they're going to be split pushing beyond vision lines perpetually, which means you can perpetually kill them. We have the rune sets of First Strike, Fleet Footwork, Electrocute, Conqueror, Fleet providing so much utility obviously with the Gustwalker Hatchling in terms of bush manipulation, and of course sustain in those fights. And obviously bear in mind that with itemization changes coming in the next 2 months, and obviously being tinkered with over the subsequent patches, I will create a page just for the updated items, and I will give a link to that in the description when the time arrives, just so you can have all of the updated items for all of these champions for the rest of the year. And I'll make sure that's presented in a nice infographic, so when you watch this video in a month or 2, the champions will still be good, and the itemization updates will be linked below for you. I absolutely love Rengar as a meta-agnostic pick, something amazing to one trick, totally able to take over any game, split push potential, teamfight god. If you want to go tank, you can do that. If you want to be bruiser, you can do that. Just a whole package, a whole ecosystem of cats at your disposal. Next up, we have Nocturne because, pun not intended or intended, he is flying under the radar. Something that is really good at getting in the face of people with lethal tempo lately. Yeah, he does kind of get buffed and nerfed with Riot a little bit, but it doesn't really make him a flying pigeon as it used to. They used to kind of just make him nonsense, right? He was just literally a clay pigeon, fly off, shoot it, explode, boom, doesn't really do any damage to anybody. Now though, we do have Duskblade Strikebreaker builds, and of course that will shift as well. He just has a very potent, versatile kit of being, hey, I'm a one-shot machine, I'll die, but you will die, and you will die, and you will die as well. I'm taking 2 or 3 with me. You can also go a bit more of a bruiserish build, and this will be true for all time. Build some tanky atomization, build some HP, build a Sterix Gauge, and ensure that you survive. He's not going to be banned a lot. People are not going to respect him either, just like the Rengar and the split push. You have the ability to take over ADCs. And when it comes to mid-game macro, like I just talked about in the video previously, Nocturne and Rengars have a distinct ability to shove and cut. By that I mean you can push side lanes, force a rotation or 2, and then go in with your mobility or with your ultimate, and now you have a numbers advantage fight somewhere else. And I love strong mid-game champions for climbing and maining, because essentially if you don't have the perfect early game, if you have a rough time because you maybe haven't tried some of the courses, and then you get to the mid-game and you're a little bit behind, hey, you can still win the game with good old-fashioned macro and strong mid-game thrust. Doesn't quite have the signs of mastery, but I think there is a sign of, hey, this guy mains Nocturne. He knows his DPS output. He knows when to time his spell shield. He knows his flash fear combos with the tether range. You can see the fluidity of mechanics, even if he doesn't have the same mechanical ceiling as that of a Rengar or a Qiyana or a Nidalee. Next up, we have Bel'Veth, and again, this champion literally did just get buffed, but largely she's left alone. She kind of dips in and out of the meta here and there, and she's just too conditional for the highlights of the high elo. But as we all know on this channel, I like to coach a lot of Bel'Veths, and I put a lot of their content out, and we're friends with the rank 1 Bel'Veth on EU West. The champion is aggressive, the champion is snowball, the champion can now also full clear much more easily than she could in the past, and again also has dynamic itemization variability. This is absolutely huge for me because you need to be able to adapt to the game state, but also to find your own playstyle. If you're going to main a champion, you have to understand what fits well with you and what you have the most fun playing, even if it's maybe a little less effective. The whole idea is to find a champion we love, we're good at, isn't going to be taken away from us by Riot or the enemy team, and we can use no matter who we're facing in the meta. is our win condition able to be realized regardless of what's going on with Riot's head in terms of towers and minions and gold and experience? Yes, because as soon as we get a Herald and Void Fishies, I'm taking your Nexus. As soon as 15-16 minute comes, I'm already at 2-3 items and I'm going to take over fights easily. It's that level of control and that level of one-trick ability that makes a champion good to main. You might not be a one-trick, you might have multiple champions in your pool, but if you chose to spam at 100 games, you would get it the majority of the time and you would climb well. And Rebirth is pretty damn good at doing that. Next up we have Echo, who again might not be a very sexy pick at this particular stage, but the champion, all you need to do is do full clear, do a 3-quadrant gank, make sure you're not falling behind too much, a few counter ganks here and there, king of that, 2.25 second stun on that W. Does not have amazing itemization diversity, but you do have the Rockabelt Zhonya's prototypical combo. That's a reference to when it was called Protobelt. And then of course we have the Nash's Tooth Rocket Belt, and of course now with the Lichbane buffs we have the return of the Lichbane. And so now you can become the Lich King of the early game and basically ensure that your snowballing is free. And trust me, it really is free. You take yourself a Dark Harvest or First Strike, you guarantee yourself a lot of scaling, and as long as you're not shitting the bed in the early game by making really suboptimal decisions and compromising yourself and letting the enemy jungler get to their win cons before you, you really will be able to handle your lanes enough that even though you might have an inting bot, an inting top, if you can start to suppress the enemy jungler, if you can then get one little Herald or Dragon, if you can snowball one lane with a few repeat ganks and get yourself juiced, that crucial fight that happens, you'll take it over. You have the reset button, you have the mobility, you have the split push. Again, quite a common theme here, right? All 4 champions have split push capability. All 4 champions can dominate the mid game in a variety of ways, even if teams are inting or if they're having a bad game. That's what makes a champion good to main. It's great to win the 60% of games you're expected to win. It's even better to win the 20% of a coin flip because you start taking them over with macro and other mechanisms. And while Jarvan IV might not have that same split push capability, although he could in theory do it, what he makes up for in that is early game pressure. Absolute snowball. Full clear or gank, whatever you want to do, he does it all. Itemization, do you want to be a gore drinker, stonking survivor? Do you want to be a lethality killing diver? He's really an amazing champion to main just simply because, yes, while his ban rate is up a bit because he's in the meta, typically he's not. And typically his armor shred on his Q is not paid attention to. Typically they don't pay attention to the attack speed boost on his E anymore. And obviously the AD ratio in his shield now means when you build damage, you can still survive. And if you're playing him in Flex and Clash, which is also something that's good to main, you can always go something like a Stoneplate or a Sterix Gauge to ensure extra survival in those tight 5v5s. A good Jarvan controls teamfights. A good Jarvan might not have the split push that the other champions have so far, but he has way better teamfight control. So if you're someone who likes to set up your lanes for success, control objectives, not fight too much with the enemy jungler, but enough that they can't really do what they want to do, and then you love to win those skirmishes, those fights, those engages, you love engaging, you love disrupting, this is the champion for you. Again, that's why I make the full list of different kinds of champions, so you have, you know, a tank, an assassin, a fighter, we've got farmers, we've got gankers, all the different spices of life in the jungle for you to choose from for champions that you think are good to get you to your goals. Next up, we have the horse Hecarim. And in this particular case, obviously, I'm not a typical fan of this champion historically, but his itemization diversity really is insanely profound at this particular stage. So many different ways to play. We have lost the Chem Tank full tank build. You can still go your Divine Sun Reflexation. That is the rank 1 careers methodology. He still does that. Why? More of a fisting game, more of a tight mechanical game, something that's great for you if you are playing your Flex and your Clash 5s. But the lethality builds are absolutely outrageous, and with Ghostblade becoming a mythic, that's going to be an interesting itemization build that I will update on the infographic in a few weeks. But for now, what you see is your very stereotypical itemization choice. It allows you engage, it allows you rotational ability, it gives you a bit of survivability, but again, you have to understand that you're playing more like an assassin. You're not playing something that's gonna go in 1v5 and survive and thrive, but a good Hecarim player who understands a very simple life. Sequence, look for gank, nothing, okay, go back to base. Can I gank? Sequence again, can I gank again? Okay, do an objective, do a bit of counter jungling, let me split push a little bit. His ramp up speed for farm really just keeps getting faster and faster. Hey, I'm in a losing game state. Let me quickly sequence and push a wave out because no one can match my tempo by doing that. You can find windows back into the game in almost any game with this champion. And again, meta agnostic means that he can play against anything in the meta, not necessarily that he isn't meta. And I think we can all agree if you lock in Hecarim blindly, you're not really gonna have an issue, at least if your pathing is good, which it should be. Signs of mastery with some of these champions, like with Jarvan and Hecarim, yeah, they don't always reign supreme, but again, with a Nocturne, you can see when there's a very good Hecarim. It's very easy to see that this guy knows his damage threshold, his movement speed spike, the max range of his ultimate, exactly when to ult and E, he uses his ghost properly, he uses his phase rush properly, he uses everything properly. And you can tell because of how many experience levels they'll be ahead of the enemy jungler and how they dominate all the skirmishes easily. Next up, we have Gragas, and this champion, for some reason, as I've been seeing tweets from High Elo, is escaping those nerf bats. Why? How? Who knows? The champion is so strong, has been so strong. I've been saying for a year, guys, play this in the jungle, go AP, win. And, you know, no one really listens until we get the jungle pets and they say, hey, look, I can full clear now, which misses the point of the champion, but what that does do is make him a meta-agnostic pick. Hey, I need to gank against this jungler, I can do that. Hey, I need to full clear a little bit. You know, I'm not very fast at it, but I can do that as well. Ideally, we're still being very, very active, but his combos, his animation cancels, such a sign of mastery, a difficult champion to successfully pull off. Most Gragases are like geriatric ducks. They just go for the body slam, then they chuck a Q, and then maybe they'll R a little bit, and they don't think about the order of events, they don't animation cancel with a W, they don't do anything smoothly. And when you watch a good Gragas do those things, you're like, oh, I understand now. Okay, I see. And obviously you fuse that with good jungle knowledge, pathing, ganking tempo, and the slows and disruption for team fighting. That's critical. Knowing how to use your ultimate in team fights as an engage, disruption, or disengage tool, ooh, it's spicy when done well. We're not getting AP itemization changes, so these items will be absolutely fine, obviously. And you can take him support, and you can take him top lane, and hey, you could still take him mid lane. I mean, you have more AP itemization choices than an Echo and an Evelyn already, so that's a good plus for him. If you like early ganking tempo and controlling fights and having a disgusting amount of one-shot damage at the same time, this champion's gonna be good for you. Next up, we have Kindred, and obviously Kindred is one of the absolute best monster invader junglers. If you want to shut down enemy junglers with ease, control, and just smurf on a map and win at 25, this is the champion. If you're not able to do that consistently, you're not playing them correctly. Huge signs of mastery, doesn't really care what the meta is, I'm still gonna do the same kind of play style, I'm still gonna snowball, because remember, scaling isn't snowballing. When we scale through snowballing on Kindred. Pathers can just exist and become strong. Kindred needs the mark game, the suppression, and the snowball from those marks to actually take over games. If you just sit and exist as Kindred, you ain't gonna get fed. Kindred's itemization will shift when we go to the new itemization, so that will be an interesting one, but again, there's a lot of diversity there. You do want a Noon Quiver item first, so keep that in mind. Go into practice to learn all of your wall hub locations. You're not really gonna get nerfed. In fact, you're getting AP buffs to go with the new Rage Blade, so if you like on-hit builds with a bit of magic damage, hey, that could be a thing for you as well. And where they lack in terms of maybe early game strategy, they make up for in terms of playstyle and identity, which is absolutely fine because we have Lime and Wolf and everyone's always complained about which one does what. Next we have Poppy, and Poppy was one I put as a hidden OP jungler about a month or two ago, and then Riot were like, let's buff her. And I said, wait a second, really? She's actually quite strong. Hey, now she's going back to the top lane. Now she's definitely very, very strong in the jungle. You are looking to 3-camp gank, you are looking to invade, you are not looking to full clear, please don't do it, it's slow. Use your PvP nature, your strong damage scalings, your strong survivability on that W passive. The lower you get, the more beefy you get. Use your extended attack range Aria on that passive to get a shield and of course, extra damage from long range. And you've got an ult that basically says, hey Gragas, watch this when it comes to disengaging enemy team comms. An absolute copious amount of item diversity to take over games. For the first time, that just didn't feel like there was a strong tank jungler that I could recommend maining. Yes, Zac is definitely the one, but I'm not entirely sure he's gonna avoid nerfs and what he's gonna feel like with itemization changes. He's definitely a champion that kind of goes up and down in terms of Riot's special list. And so while we can and do build Poppy as a fighter for extra damage with our Hail Blades, our Dark Harvest, or whatever we want to go, phase rush in and out, we can of course go Sheen into Frostfire and go a bit more tanky. Also, you could just play Udyr. Go farm, go scale, get Demonics, go Jack Show, get your Stone Blades, just become a tanky son of a bitch, have a Frozen Heart, you want a new Force of Nature, whole bunch of different tank itemization coming forward as well. This guy is a DPS damaging, slowing monster who scales and is unkillable while also being able to, as I said, kill people and slow them. So even if you have weaker early games, you can still do quite a lot of work in terms of making sure you become strong later on. With great farming power comes great responsibility to pay attention to lanes and objectives. Also comes a great power to counter jungle and suppress enemy junglers where necessary. And I think people are realizing, hey, it's a little bit underwhelming, but he's meta agnostic. He will be good in a ganking meta and a farming meta. He's currently going through the lowest pick rate and ban rate meta that he's ever had since his rework. And his itemization has historically been quite diverse. Yeah, there's a standard build you go, but you can go for the AD focus build, and there is of course a low probability that Riot will just destroy him because they want him to be popular for some reason. He just is. Finally, we have Fiddlesticks. Obviously, I don't want to talk a lot about this champion. He is unique. He is one of the best. He is never going to be nerfed. Riot love having this champion be around. It is a one-tricks life. This is where you don't have a backup champion typically. Hecarim and Udyr could work though. Probably more so a Karthus or Lilia in my opinion, but he is the one-tricks dream of scaling, uniqueness. No one really will ever respect it. You're not looking to skirmish. Lots of signs of mastery in terms of your clears and positioning, and will always be something that you can win with just by turning one fight with one critical ultimate. So there you have it, all of the best junglers to main, from fighter to assassin to marksman to tank. to mage or whatever the hell fiddlesticks might actually be. And again, if you're watching this in a month or so after release, I will make sure there's an infographic link below to the updated builds based upon Riot's itemization changes. And if you want to understand exactly how to dominate the mid game that I was talking about, click the video in the box on the top right.